And I hope everyone's able to get me. So firstly, before we start, is everyone able to get me clearly?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So we are going to start off with an example of the journal. Last time, one of you mentioned that you wanted to see an example of how the questions would be phrased and how the answer would be put. So we have one in front of our screens. So we're just going to do 3 of them. I think that should be all of them. Yes. So the first one says, okay, so the first one says chèque remise au fournisseur. So this one is simply saying a check was delivered to the fournisseur who is the provider. So the fournisseur received a check, and from us, the business, we lost the check. So we debit the fournisseur and we credit our bank account. So that's going to translate off as this. So like I said before, the first column is reserved for the comptes, which I'm going to explain later on today. And well, then this column is reserved for the libellé, so the petite explication of what happened in the transaction. So here we have fournisseur being debited. And like I said, the debit account should always be written closer to the first column, and the credit one should start from the middle of the box, of this libellé box. So, and bank, because we lost a sum of money of 5,000, so we're going to credit the compte for bank. So yeah, which translates off as this. So that's it for our first question. Moving on to the second one, it says vente des produits finis, facture, it says a numéro, réglé en espèces et à crédit. So this one has it has 3 accounts involved because the person who bought the goods did not pay for them in full. He paid a certain sum of money there and then, and he left a later sum of money for, he got it on credit. So he said he would pay later on. So this transaction is going to be translated as everything you sell is credited. So let's get that as that perspective first. Everything you sell is credited. So we have client being the money that the customer paid for. Then the case here is going to be the amount that he got on credit, except here they didn't put them quite well. If you get something on credit, it's not supposed to be written case. So I don't know what's with the mix match. Then we have 2 things because the person didn't pay for the goods in full. He didn't pay the full amount for them just there and then. So we're going to have 2 accounts that are going to be debited, which is the client account and the cash account. And for the credit side, we're going to have vente des produits. So what's going to happen is that for the payment side, the amount is going to be divided. So vente des produits is the total amount that the goods costed, which is the total amount that he's supposed to pay for. But, okay. Just a minute. For the first one. Okay. Let me draw back to the first one. Just a minute. I want to Okay, so sorry for that. Let's draw back to the first one. So the transaction says, which is just the very first one there, it says chaque remise au fournisseur. Excuse me. Is it professional because the first part of the transaction reads regular on the space? Oui, c'est ça. Luyando, you are right actually. So they made a mistake in the figures. So the other one they were supposed to have switched them. They're supposed to have Client because the person got them on credit, and the case is the amount that the person paid for them there and then. So yeah, that's what's supposed to happen. Thank you for that remark. So drawing back to the first one, we have case remise au fournisseur. So this is simply a check was sent to the provider of goods. So in this case, the provider of goods is going to be debited because he is receiving a sum of money, and we as a business, we are losing money. So we are losing money in form of what? Check. So which is bank. So the transaction is going to be recorded as follows. We have fournisseur on the debit side because the provider is the one getting the money, and we have bank on our credit. So fournisseur is placed closer to the column of the comptes because it's debited. Then for the credit account, you started from the middle of this box. So this whole box, the libeller box, you started from the middle, but yeah, they started it a bit further on just to. So this space in between is what it's what helps you identify which one is credit or debit in a situation where the person did not indicate the comptes. So the bank account is the one which is credited because we lost money in form of a check from our bank. So I hope that's clear, or maybe I need to make a re-explanation, any clarification, or je passe. Okay, let's pass on to the second one. So the second one, it says vente de produits finis, facture. It's clear now. Okay, cool. So the second one says vente de produits finis, facture of a certain amount, réglé en espèces et of a certain amount à crédit. So here we have three things involved here. We have vente de produits, which is a separate account, which will be credited because in this case, we sold goods to another person. So we lost goods. And for the method of payment, we have two things that transpired. Firstly, we have the person giving us a certain amount of money, which is not the full amount of money. So we're going to record that as cash because he paid us in cash. So it's going to be kept as cash. And this person also did not finish the payment. So he left off a certain amount. He owes us a certain amount. So to us, he is our client, and to him, we are his fournisseur. So this transaction is going to come off like this. So we have client, except here we have to switch these two because case is the one that was 15,000 and client is the one that was 5,000. So for the debit side, we received an amount of 15,000 in cash, and we have someone owing us 5,000 for goods. Then for the credit side, we lost goods. So we sold goods, which amounted up to 20,000. So with the amounts here, like I said before, the debit and the credit side always have to be equal. In this case, they're equal because 20,000 is the value of the goods, the total value, and the 15,000 plus the 5,000 is the total value of how much this person paid. So I don't know if that's clear for the second one, or maybe au besoin d'une autre explication.
Repeat, please. You can carry the page.
Okay, so drawing onto the transaction again, it reads vend des produits finis, facture, a certain amount, réglé en espèces, a certain amount, à crédit. So here we have three things happening. We sold goods, which is something which is on the other side of the account. Then for the method of payment, he decided to pay us in two forms. So he gave us 15,000 worth of cash and a 5,000 to be paid at a later date, which is a crédit. So here we have, what we have is that the amount of goods so here we see that we don't have a figure for vend des produits finis. We don't have it in the transaction, but it is up to us. It is our initiative to be able to identify that if this person paid 15,000 there and he owes us a 5,000, which is for the same goods, which is to be paid at a later date. So it means the total value of the goods sold was 20,000. So here it's just initiative. So we're going to put it down in this way. So firstly, I'll start with the easier side, which is the part where we sold, the part where we lost something. Like I said, creditor is a person who loses, and debitor, creditor, giver, debtor, receiver. That's the golden rule of accounts. So we have on the credit hand side, we have vend des produits because we lost goods. So these goods amounted to the total amount that this person was supposed to pay. Sauf que he paid for it in intervals. He paid a certain amount and another amount he let us, well, we let him carry it on to a later date. So on the credit hand side, we are going to have 20,000 dirhams, which is a total of 15 and 5,000. Then we draw onto the debit side, which is the side of what we received, like him, which is the method of payment by him. So firstly, we have here, there's a mistake though. We are supposed to change the two in terms of amounts. So we have case was 15,000 and client was 5,000. So here we have case because 15,000, because it's the amount of money that he paid us on the spot. Then we have an amount due of 5,000, which is an amount that he promised to pay us on a later date. So in terms of payment, he paid us in two ways. He paid something there and then, and he left something to a later date. He just said, or yeah, something like that. So I don't know if that's clear, or maybe I try to simplify things further.
Yeah.
Okay. So drawing on to the third and last one, we have achat de matériel premier, facture, and a certain amount, à crédit. So here, the person, we bought goods. We bought goods from someone, and we did not pay for them there and then. We will pay for them. We got them on credit. So this transaction is going to have two effects. We are going to have a fournisseur, because in this case, we are the ones who bought and someone is the one giving them to us on credit, not the other way around. So in this case, we are the clients and we are getting from a fournisseur. And this achat de marchandise premier is what will debit and the fournisseur will be credited. So this is going to be written as follows. Here, there's a mistake as well. Oh, sorry. It's just right. It's just right. Sorry, I was reading the wrong one. So we have this one. I'm not sure if I'll be able to get the transaction on the 15th. So we have achat de marchandises, de matériel premier, as an account debited of 20,000 dirhams. And this is the corresponding count for it. And This FRS is an abbreviation for fournisseur, which is going to be 20,000 as well. The name of the fournisseur is a facture. No.
I don't know if it's just me, but why is the 20,000 for Asha the material not recorded like in the same line? It's slightly like on top on the date. Is that like some sort of reason or
No,
something?
this is c'est un frappe de main. It's just a mistake. It's just a mistake in typing. It's supposed to be recorded right straight with the achat de matériaux premium. So there's this question. I don't think I understand your question. Can you please tell it to me via audio? It's from iPhone.
Hello?
Oui, je vous écoute.
Yes. My question is the name of the fournisseur. Is it facture numéro 4? Like the supplier. Like the account name in the libellé. You can hear me? Hello?
Oh, oui, I can get you. No? Okay, we have a problem connection. Okay, if anyone understood his question, can you please explain it to me? Because I am a bit lost.
I believe he was looking at the facture number 4, which is on the previous account. It's not really in direct relation to the account we're dealing with now. I think it was recorded because on the transactions for this particular account, it was written facture number 4. But for the account we're dealing with now, there's nothing there. I think it's similar to the first question, which has check,
Okay.
you know, that there.
Okay, sorry. I did not. Yes, so he said, why didn't we record that? Actually, we were supposed to record it. This facture number A12 was supposed to record it as well. I think this book was written in a really fast manner. There are a lot of hiccups here and there. Yes, but that is the case. We're supposed to write it, so in this case, it's supposed to be facture number A12. So I hope that's clear. So any questions, any re-explanations I need to make concerning the journal, or we are cool, we move on to something else? Okay, so we move on to what we call the balance. It is found on page 59 of this same book. So if you could kindly scroll down to there. Voila. So this La Balance is a book which comes right after you establish the grand-livre. And what happens is that, like I said before, when you are establishing a new book, you use the documents or rather the information from the previous one. So in this case, if it comes right after the grand-livre, you are going to establish it with the information found in the grand-livre. It's actually like it would work on the same principle as the grand-livre. Sauf it has, well, it's written as a table. The grand-livre is written as individual accounts, and it is placed into a table. It's drawn as a table. So we have, well, most of these things aren't really necessary, but you have to learn them. You have to read them just to understand the logic of what will be happening. We're going to skip it onto how you draw it, and I'll explain for you the importance of it as you just read. So this is how you establish, and this is how you draw the balance. The first column is for numéro de compte, as always. Then this intitulé de compte is the same as the libellé. So you could just simplify your life and write libellé. Then we have the third column, which is the somme. The somme is, well, it's the totals that you get from the grand-livre. And lastly, we have the solde. So these solde are also those that we get from the grand-livre. So, it's a table which continues just until the end, and it's in chronological order of classes. So here where we have numéro de compte, when you write class 1, you write all the accounts which were pertaining to the first class. And when you write class 2, you write all of them which are pertaining to the second class, 3, 4, 5, jusqu'à 8. And totals, as always, so under this somme, sorry, I forgot to mention this. Under this column called somme, we have two subdivisions as well, which is the debit and the credit side. So under here would have a line drawn again, which should be debit and credit. Same thing with the solde. We would have a line drawn there, and we'd have debit and credit. So don't know if that's clear, or maybe we need 3 explanations on how to draw it. Okay, moving on to some theory. Yes, something that's going to help you at least. So it says here, the total de balance égale à total de journal. So the total of the balance is, the balance at the end here, the totals, these totals should be equal to the totals of the journal. So the two totals you find at the end of the journal must be equal to the 2 totals you find here. That's the first rule. The second rule is that total de solde débiteur égale à total de solde créditeur. So here, where we have the column of the solde, the totals on each individual column that's pertaining to the solde must be equal as well. Then lastly, we have total de débit inscrit dans le compte égale à total de crédit inscrit dans le compte. So it's just a repetition of the first one, which says under the main column of somme, the subdivisions must also be equal. So I think there's really a lot you have to learn how to draw. And the thing is that you are not told, you're just supposed to memorize it. You won't find it already drawn for you. No, and how you present it also matters. It isn't just about the information. It's how you present it, the clarity in your work, and yeah, tout ça. So the main purpose of establishing the balance is to make sure that the double entry we entered in the journal and in the grand-livre are correct. So there are situations where you find the totals in the sum on the debit and the credit side and under this main column. If they are not equal, it means the double entry you entered in the journal wasn't correct. So it means you have to go back and counter check your work, starting from the journal all the way to the balance. Same thing applies on the column of the sold. So you have to really make sure if the totals are just not equal, then you must have made a mistake somewhere. So that is one thing you should note as well. Then here we have the classes. The classes also have their own subdivisions. So under class 1, we have class 111, we have class 112. The numbers increase just like that. So they should strictly be in chronological order. So meaning a class that comes before should be placed before. You should not jumble them in the sense that you write class 1, you write some that belong to class 2, then you go back to class 1. That would be put as wrong. So you really have to respect the chronological order of classes, meaning you have to memorize the classes by heart, if I should say. So you really have to know which one comes before the other and which one comes later to some. And lastly, we have c'est une instrument de gestion. So these totals as well help you evaluate your business, whether you are profitable from the previous accounting period, so the previous year. So if you find the totals have increased, it means you've made a profit from last year. If you find they've decreased, it means you've made a loss from last year. So it's an instrument of management in the sense that it helps us identify whether we have made a profit or a loss in our past accounting period. So yeah, that's it for the theoretical part, unless I have unconsciously missed out something, which let me just counter check. No, that's it. So any questions on why we established this book, concerns, theories, anything, I'm at your disposal. Okay, so another thing that I forgot to mention is that there's some instances where we might have an extra column called the colonne de mouvement. So this one simply shows just how money it helps us directly compare with our previous accounting period. So if we had, it just shows the movement of money in an account per se. So if we had an account of cash last year and we have it this year, so the movement account would be strictly the difference in those two accounts. So it helps us. It's just like a further clarification on whether our business is profitable or not. So that marks the end. One more thing, you really have to memorize how to draw these documents, starting from the bilan all the way to the balance. So you have to, I'm sure it's going to come naturally with time, but as for now, you have to try to practice how they look like. So now a question to you guys. Have you, yes?
Could you kindly repeat the last point that you just said?
About the column or maybe?
About the column.
Okay, so there are some instances where we have an additional column, which is called the colonne de mouvement. So this one helps us compare our accounts directly instead of just having to compare the totals, which I had mentioned before. we get to compare our accounts directly, in the sense that if we had a cash account in the previous accounting period and we have a cash account in this accounting period, so what this column, the movement, is going to help us with is to identify the difference between the previous cash account and the new one. So whether there is, so in a situation where we had 5,000 in our cash account last year and we have 10,000 in our cash account. So when there's an increment, that is considered as debited. So we have column de mouvement, and that column de mouvement has two subdivisions. So we have the debit and the credit. So on the debit side, if we have an increment in an account, it is considered as a debit transaction. If we have a decrement, it is considered as a credit. So in a situation where we had 5,000 last year and we have 10,000 this year, that would be debit of 5,000. So you strictly write the difference. You don't write you write the difference in an account which was previously there and it's still there now. So that helps us compare it directly. So then in a situation where it's vice versa, where we had 10,000 in the previous accounting period and now we have 5,000. So the difference between those two is 5,000. So that 5,000 is going to be recorded as credited because it is an amount less, or we've lost 5,000 per se. So there's another question in the chat bar. Let me just look at it. Yes, so these T1 and T2 are totals for the sum and the solde respectively. So in a situation where we have the colonne de mouvement, we have T3 as well. So now a question to you guys. Have you understood this thus far? Because this is the last book we are going to do, and they are all directly interlinked. So have you understood the link between all of them? Or maybe I can try to repeat from the beginning all the way to where we are now. So I need to have. So we'll start off with the definition. For those who have the book, I will give you a page onto which we are going to refer. I'm going to refer to you a page. And for those who don't have, I will do my level best to try to explain it as easy as I can. So starting with the definition, we have le plan comptable est un document qui donne la liste des comptes à utiliser par l'entreprise. So this is a book which contains list of accounts with codes. So each account has a specific code. Then this whole passage simply talks about the CGNC, which is also another document. So this CGNC is a document which contains the rules and the regulations of accounting according to the Moroccan standard. So it's a list of rules, regulations, methods which are used in accounting. So for the purpose of clarity and transparency. Then we move on to the actual codification of this book. So for the definition, are we clear? So I've spoken of two things. I've spoken of the plan comptable and the CGNC. The CGNC is the Code Générale de la Nominalisation Comptable. So the plan comptable is simply a list of accounts or transactions, accounting transactions. Then the CGNC is a list of the rules, regulations, and methods which are used by enterprises. So these are two different documents. Please do not get them mixed up. So there's a CGNC and the plan comptable. So moving on to moving on to the classifications of accounts themselves, we have, they are about 8 classes. 8, well, this class 0 as well, but class 0 in this case comes after class 8. It doesn't start from 1. It doesn't start from 0 all the way to 8. It starts from 1 all the way to 8, then 0 at the end, because 0 is just reserved for special occasions. So we have class 1, from class 1 to 5. These are classes which I would say compte de situation. So compte de situation, meaning these classes help us identify the financial position of a business, and they strictly concern the bilan. So from class 1 to 5, it concerns the bilan. That's in class 1, like I think I had told them to you before, but I'm just going to repeat myself. So class 1 is compte de financement permanent, which is financial dates that are brought into the business either by ourselves or our partners. So except these are permanent, so they exist in a business for a period of, if it's a date, its repayment is a period more than a year, strictly more than a year. So, and we move on to class 2, which is compte d'actifs immobilisés. So this is an account of our fixed assets that a business possesses. Then we have class 3, which is compte d'actifs séculaires, haute trésorerie. So this class 3 is active. These are current assets. So these are assets which are brought into a business for the main purpose of resale. So then we have class 4, which is compte passif séculaire haute trésorerie. So this is, it's also about, it's also a financement, except how it differs with the financement permanent is that this one is not permanent, in the sense that if it's a date, you are to repay it in a period of less than 1 year. So we have 2 things: financement permanent, greater than a year, you're supposed to repay it back after a year, and passive séculaire, you are to pay it back within a period of 1 year. So then class 5, we have compte de trésorerie. These are just ways of in which we keep our finances. That is cash in hand, cash in bank, ainsi de suite. So for these first 5, I hope we are clear. And in addition, they strictly concern the bilan. So I hope we are clear on the first 5.
Yes.
Okay, let's see. Moving on to the CPC. So the CPC also has classes which strictly belong to it. We have class 6 and class 7. So class 6 is the compte de charge. Compte de charge, these are simply expenses. Expenses like electricity, bills, salaries, tous ça, they fall under the CPC. And we have class 7. So this is the compte de produit. So the produit in this instance are our incomes. Like, for instance, a loan to someone, and we ask them to pay the loan with a certain amount of interest. So that interest is a gain to us. It's an income. So it's classified under the produit. So hope that sums it up for class 7. For the compte de CPC, which is 7 and 6. So, okay, am I speaking too fast? Because your silence, it's hard to tell whether people are able to understand me or not.
The pace is okay, I think. I don't know about others.
Okay, so I will presume things are all right, unless you tell me otherwise. So moving to class 8, like I said, we have compte de résultat. The résultat is simply a net result we get after our accounting period. So these are strictly reserved into class with. Then we have class 0, but we do not use it. We do not use it, at least for Comptabilité Générale. So now moving on to the codification des comptes. So this codification des comptes is an explanation of what really can repeat on the classes. We had experienced some internet connection problems. So, okay. From the start. So just on the classes, okay. So someone has asked me to repeat on the classes. So I'm going to do so just roughly. So we have classes starting from 1 all the way to 8. So the class from 1 to 5 are classes that strictly belong to the bilan. So that compte des situations, they show the financial position of a business as at a given date. And we move on to, so these are compte de financement permanent, compte d'actifs immobilisés, compte actifs séculaires hors trésorerie, compte de passifs séculaires hors trésorerie, and lastly we have compte de trésorerie. So I think I have repeatedly explained what each of these are. I see no need to repeat unless otherwise. Then moving on to class 6 and 7. So for class 6, these are the comptes de charge, and class 7, these are the comptes de produit. So these comptes strictly belong to the CPC, and they are called comptes de gestion because they deal with how a business manages its day-to-day affairs. So yeah, and well, the compte de charge would be the expenses, and the compte de produit would be the incomes, or rather the gains a business has. And lastly, we have class 8, which is compte de résultats. Les résultats, ce sont des résultats de. The résultat is a net figure that we find at the end of an accounting period. So I hope that's clear for the person who asked me to repeat on that. Okay, so moving on to la codification now. So here we're strictly dealing with the plan comptable, the small red book. So we have what we call codification des comptes. So when I say a code, so if you have the plan comptable, the small red book, there is page 4. I am referring you to page 4 of the plan comptable. There is a table at the bottom, and there's a smaller table at the bottom, which is called codification de PCG. That is what I want to draw your attention to. So for those who don't have, follow me via the screen. So we have, so in an account like capital social is 1111. Those are 4 ones. So each figure has a representation, like it means something. So you just don't move all the way from 111. It's actually like a build-up. First you start with 11, we start with 11, all the way to 1,000 and 1,111. So the first figure that is drawing from the left to the right. So the first figure on your left hand side of an account is what we call the class or the mass. So if you, let me try to, okay, this book, okay, yes, so here we are. So like I was saying before, the first figure is what we call the class or the mass. So here, just a minute. So the first figure on, I'm going to deal with the comptes capital social. So I'm going to help you explain the build up all the way from why there's class 1 there and why there's 11 and why there's tous. So we start with the first figure. The first figure is called the mass or the compte or the class, sorry. So the first figure is strictly called the class. So in our case, capital social, the class is 1, which is capital de financement permanent. So you have to actually memorize all the way from 1 to the compte you're looking for. It actually helps. It makes the work easier. So then we have the first 2 figures, or rather the second figure. It's called the rubrique. So this figure is strictly called the, and in this case, it's called the capital propre. So we have the first one, the class, which is 1, which is just the 1, the first one. It's called the compte de financement permanent. And when we add another figure, it becomes the okay. So yeah, that should be large enough for you to see. So the first figure is what we call the mass, or the mass, to help not to confuse. We're going to call it the mass. Second figure is the rubrique. Third figure is the post. So the third figure in this case is capital social or personnel. So if you have the plan comptable, you actually see these figures are in different shades of color. I think this one for the first 2 then different, but the third one it's just the same as the rest. So they are in different shades of color if you actually have the plan comptable. This one is really big. It's placed as a heading. This one as a subheading, and this one is painted in bold, and the others are just written in normal font. So the first 3 letters, the first 3 numbers in this case, so that is the 1 there, is called the post. And fourthly, we go to the 4th figure. So that would be 1. This is the mass, the rubrique, the post. And lastly, we have what is called the compte. So this is what we actually, the compte is what we actually use to record in the comptes, in the journal, in the grand-livre, tous. It's very rare that you'd have to just write the la poste, which is the first 3 figures of an account. So then we move on to, so we ended on 3 figures. Then we have another addition of 4 figures. So an example is this one, sorry, except. So 4 figures is simply a build up from the 3 figures. And for example here, we have capital personnel, which is 1117, 1117. So the sous-compte of this is this 11171. So the sous-compte is simply an addition of another figure to the compte. So it's the first 4 figures is what we call the sous-compte. Then we have the compte divisionnel and the rest, but those will not actually deal with them. So are we clear? Are we clear with the codification? Because this is really important. You have to memorize this. And in my case, for the first semester, other people are allowed to go with the book. like I think economics, the economic students can go with the plan comptable. But ENCG, they take it that you should be able to memorize this book because you're going to use it throughout your studies. So you are really supposed to memorize all of these things, except not all of them per se, but they'll simplify them for you. They'll just tell you the first three figures and the count we're looking for is capital social, just like that, except you have to memorize which one is the count, the mass, the rubrique, la poste, tout ça. So are we clear on this? Or maybe Vapita?
C'est clair pour moi.
And the rest, is it clear or maybe kaya very sticker?
Maybe you can repeat one more time.
Okay. So starting from the very first, we are going to start the build up again. So I said the first figure is what we call the mass. So in a situation where we have capital social, so we're going to learn the build up from the first figure all the way to the fourth one. Then we'll change to capital personnel because it's the one which has an extended figure, which is the fifth one. So we have the first figure, which is this the class or the mass, if you whatever you choose to call it. So we have the compte de financement permanent. The first figure is strictly called the compte de financement permanent. So then to build onto the first figure, we add another figure. So it becomes two figures. The first two figures, or the second figure in this case, are called the capital propre. So onto that, we add another figure, which is the capital social or personnel. So this is the third figure. The third figure is la poste. And onto the fourth figure. So the first four are so this capital social is the first compte, and the first compte be, well, in this case, because we have capital prop, which is the compte, we have the rubrique, we have the post, we have tout ça. Then moving on to one which actually has an extended figure, we have 1117 capital personnel. So capital personnel, we build onto adding another figure. We have what is called a compte divisionnel or a sous-compte. So yeah, that explains it. So this principle I have just explained to you goes on to, well, it extends onto the end of this whole book. So in this case, for this here, so the first three figures here are going to be the post. The post for this one is état de révaluation, and the compte is état de révaluation. So the compte is the one with a zero at the end. So it doesn't matter which figure is placed there. It's strictly a figure. It doesn't have to be zero. It doesn't have to be one. Any figure, as long as you see four of them, it's a compte. You see three of them, it's a post. You see less, ainsi de suite. So I think that's, well, this principle goes on to the end. So we were dealing with class 1. Let's go on to class 2. So we have class 2. So for class 2, the mass would be compte actif immobilisé, and the rubric would be immobilisation en non-valeur, the first rubric. And the third one, the troisième chiffre, would be the post. The post is the frais préliminaires. So in the first compte under this whole thing is the frais de constitution, which is the first four numbers, the count with the first 4 numbers. So I hope that's clear, because this principle is going to build on to other things. So it continues class 1, class 2, just for class with. So are we clear on everything for today?
Yes.
Okay, so any questions, concerns, anything you'd like for me to repeat